You're 29 years old, Emma, and you still don't have a real job, my mother said, her disappointment evident as she compared me to Vanessa for the 100th time. Your sister has a corner office, a company car, and respect. What do you have? A sewing machine and dreams. I wanted to tell her that my dreams employed 47 people and generated more revenue in a month than Vanessa made in a year. But I stayed quiet. For now, my name is Emma Sullivan, and I'm sitting in my mother's cramped Terzi shop in Capitol Hill, Seattle, listening to her lecture about success while I hand-stitch beading onto a customer's evening gown. The shop smells like fabric softener and my mother's disappointment, a combination I've grown accustomed to over the past 6 years. Through the front window, I can see the Seattle rain painting gray streaks down the glass, and I wonder how much longer I can maintain this double life. Vanessa walked into the shop at that exact moment, her Louboutin heels clicking against the worn linoleum floor like a countdown to my humiliation. She was dressed in head-to-toe designer labels, her blonde hair perfectly blown out, carrying shopping bags from Nordstrom and a superiority complex that could fill the entire Pike Place market. Emma, sweetie, she said, her voice dripping with false sympathy. Still playing seamstress? I thought you'd have moved on to something more substantial by now. She turned to our mother. Mom, I've been meaning to talk to you about this. Emma's 30 next year. Don't you think it's time she considered a real career path? I kept my eyes on my needlework, each stitch precise and deliberate. What Vanessa didn't know, what none of them knew, was that the navy blue dress she was wearing right now, the one she'd bragged about buying from the exclusive online boutique Aurora, was my design. I'd sketched it 6 months ago in this very shop, brought it to life in my secret studio in Soto, and watched it sell out in 48 hours at $890 a piece. Emma has always been creative, my mother said, and I could hear the silent, but, hanging in the air. But Vanessa's right. Creativity doesn't pay the bills. Look at your sister, marketing director at Cascade Strategic Group, healthcare benefits, retirement plan, respect in the business community. I bit my tongue. Vanessa made $140,000 a year at Cascade Strategic Group, and she never let anyone forget it. What she didn't know was that Aurora had generated $4.2 million last month alone. My hobby had made more money while she slept last night than she'd made in the entire previous quarter. But I couldn't tell them. Not yet. The anonymity was part of Aurora's mystique, part of what made the brand so desirable. Nobody knew who designed the clothes. There were theories floating around fashion blogs and Instagram, wild speculation about whether Aurora was a collective of designers, a reclusive celebrity, or an AI-generated brand. The mystery drove demand through the roof, and I'd built an empire on the foundation of my family's complete blindness to what I was actually accomplishing. I'm doing fine, Mom, I said quietly, finishing the beaded section and moving on to the hem. I'm happy with my work. Vanessa laughed, that tinkling sound she'd perfected in college when she wanted to make someone feel small. Happy doesn't pay for retirement, sweetie. Mom, seriously, I think we need to have an intervention. Emma's wasting her life in this shop when she could be doing something meaningful. The irony was so thick I could taste it. Vanessa's entire wardrobe consisted of fast fashion knockoffs and the occasional Aurora piece she could afford. Meanwhile, I'd just been featured in Vogue's Designers to Watch issue under my brand name, with fashion critics calling Aurora the most innovative direct-to-consumer brand since Reformation. My mother sighed. Emma, your sister has a point. Mrs. Chen's daughter just got promoted to senior analyst at Amazon. Mrs. Patterson's son is working at Microsoft. What am I supposed to tell people when they ask what you do? Tell them I'm a designer, I said, my voice steady despite the familiar ache in my chest. Designing alterations isn't the same thing, honey, Vanessa said, examining her manicure. I have a work dinner tonight at Canlis. Important clients, the kind of networking that actually matters. You should think about taking some business courses, maybe get an MBA. I could put in a word at my alma mater. I wanted to tell her that I'd taught myself business strategy by building a company from scratch, that my customer acquisition cost was 40% lower than industry average, that my profit margins would make her MBA professors weep with joy. But instead, I just nodded and went back to my stitching. The truth was, I'd started Aurora 6 years ago out of pure desperation. I was 23, fresh out of design school with a degree my family considered worthless, working in my mother's shop and listening to endless comparisons to Vanessa's corporate success. I'd begun designing clothes late at night in the tiny studio apartment I could barely afford in Fremont, using fabric scraps from the shop and a $200 sewing machine I'd bought used on Craigslist. My first collection was 10 pieces, all photographed on a borrowed mannequin against a white sheet I'd hung in my living room. I'd created an Instagram account, bought $50 worth of ads, and prayed someone would notice. Within 3 months, I had 10,000 followers. Within 6 months, I'd made my first $100,000. Within a year, I'd hired my first employee and moved production to a small warehouse space in SoDo. Now, 6 years later, Aurora had 2.3 million Instagram followers, 847,000 email subscribers, and a waitlist for certain pieces that stretched for months. I employed 47 people, from pattern makers to social media managers to customer service representatives. We'd been profiled in Business Insider, featured in countless best online boutiques lists, and worn by celebrities who had no idea they were supporting a Seattle-based designer who still helped her mother with alterations on weekends. The secrecy had been strategic at first. I didn't want my family's skepticism to poison my confidence when the business was fragile and new. But as Aurora grew, the anonymity became part of the brand identity. Mystery was marketable. And honestly, there was something deeply satisfying about watching Vanessa wear my designs while lecturing me about getting a real job. I have to get going, Vanessa said, checking her phone. Client dinner starts at 7, and I need to change. Emma, think about what I said, okay? It's not too late to turn your life around. After she left, my mother turned to me with concern in her eyes. She means well, Emma. She just wants what's best for you. I nodded, threading my needle with gold thread for the final embellishments. I know, Mom. What I didn't say was that in 3 weeks, everything was going to change. Seattle Fashion Collective was hosting their annual designer showcase at the Fairmont Olympic Hotel, and they'd invited Aurora to reveal the designer's identity as part of their keynote presentation. I'd been planning this moment for 6 months, working with their event team, preparing for the reveal that would finally show my family who I really was. But first, I had to survive 3 more weeks of being invisible. The thing about being underestimated is that people stop watching you carefully. They stop seeing you as a threat, stop considering that you might be capable of anything significant. Over the next 2 weeks, I watched my family's dismissiveness reach new heights, and I documented every moment with the cold satisfaction of someone who knew the truth would soon rewrite everything. At Sunday family dinner at my mother's house in Queen Anne, my Aunt Karen asked me if I'd considered getting a job at one of Vanessa's connections. Vanessa immediately jumped in with an offer to ask around at Cascade Strategic Group, maybe find me an administrative position. Emma's great with details, Vanessa said, serving herself more of Mom's lasagna. She could probably do really well as an executive assistant. The pay's decent, and it would give her some professional experience. My cousin Jake, who worked in sales at a furniture company, nodded enthusiastically. That's actually a great idea. Everyone has to start somewhere, right Em? Can't stay in the sewing room forever. I smiled and said nothing, cutting my lasagna into precise squares. What they didn't know was that I'd just signed a partnership deal with Meridian Textiles, one of the largest sustainable fabric suppliers in North America, for a multi-million-dollar exclusive agreement. The contract was sitting in my SoDo office, and it would triple Aurora's production capacity within 6 months. My mother patted my hand sympathetically. It's good advice, honey. Vanessa worked her way up from an entry-level position. There's no shame in starting at the bottom. I appreciate it, I said quietly. But I'm okay where I am right now. The conversation moved on, everyone discussing Vanessa's latest promotion to Senior Marketing Director, her new salary that had just crossed $160,000, and her upcoming business trip to San Francisco for a conference at the Moscone Center. I listened to her describe the conference, the networking opportunities, the important people she'd meet, and I felt something cold and anticipatory settle in my chest. Because I knew something Vanessa didn't. The Cascade Strategic Group conference she was so excited about was being sponsored by Aurora. My brand was providing gift bags for all attendees, featuring exclusive pieces worth over $300 each. Vanessa would literally be accepting my designs as a corporate gift while having no idea her seamstress sister was the one providing them. The following week brought my favorite moment of this entire charade. Vanessa called me on Tuesday afternoon while I was at the shop, asking if I could alter a dress for her. "It's an Aurora piece," she said, excitement in her voice. "I finally got one from their main collection, not just the basics. It's this gorgeous emerald cocktail dress, but it's a little long. Can you hem it for me? I need it for a company gala on Friday." I agreed, fighting to keep my voice neutral. When she dropped off the dress that evening, I held it in my hands like a secret. This was the Cascade cocktail dress from my fall collection, inspired by the color of Seattle's evergreen forests after rain. I'd sketched it during a particularly difficult Sunday dinner, channeling my frustration into something beautiful. It retailed for $695, and it had sold out in 6 hours. "Isn't it stunning?" Vanessa asked, running her fingers over the fabric. "Aurora is such a genius. Nobody knows who designs these, but whoever it is understands women's bodies perfectly. And the quality, Emma, you should feel this fabric. This is what real fashion looks like." I measured the hem, pins between my lips, and made notes about the alteration. "It's beautiful," I agreed. "I'm wearing it to the Cascade Gala at the Rainier Club," she continued. "All the executives will be there, plus some potential clients we're trying to land. First impressions matter, you know? I need to look like someone who belongs in those rooms." She had no idea that I'd been invited to that same gala as a potential vendor for Cascade Strategic Group's corporate gifting program. I'd declined, of course, because Aurora's mystery was too valuable to compromise for a corporate contract. But the invitation sat in my desk drawer at the studio, addressed to Aurora Design House, CEO. As I hemmed Vanessa's dress, taking care to preserve the original design's proportions, I thought about all the moments like this over the past 6 years. The accumulation of small invisibilities, the constant dismissal, the assumption that I was wasting my life while everyone else was building something meaningful. But I wasn't angry anymore. I was just waiting. The reveal at Seattle Fashion Collective was scheduled for Friday, October 18th at 7 p.m. The event invitation had gone out to 500 attendees, including local fashion bloggers, boutique owners, tech executives interested in fashion startups, and several journalists from publications like the Seattle Times and Pacific Northwest magazine. The theme was Unmasking Seattle's Fashion Future, and Aurora was the headliner. My mother had mentioned the event in passing 2 weeks earlier. "Did you see this in the paper?" she'd asked, showing me the Seattle Times article about the showcase. "They're revealing who designs Aurora. Can you imagine? Vanessa's been trying to get one of their pieces for months. Maybe we should go?" I'd suggested she should definitely attend, maybe make it a family outing. She'd been delighted by the idea, immediately calling Vanessa to coordinate. Neither of them had noticed when I quietly added their names to the VIP guest list through my event coordinator. The final week before the reveal, I moved through my life like an actress preparing for opening night. I spent my days at the shop, hemming and altering, listening to my mother worry about my future. I spent my evenings at the Soto studio, finalizing the presentation with my team, reviewing the press materials, and preparing for the moment when my two worlds would finally collide. On Thursday, the day before the event, Vanessa stopped by the shop with news. "Emma, you'll never believe this. I got invited to the Seattle Fashion Collective showcase tomorrow night. Some connection through work, VIP tickets. Mom, you should come with me. It'll be fun, and who knows, maybe Emma can learn something about real fashion business." My mother agreed enthusiastically, and I watched them plan their outfits, their dinner reservations before the event, their excitement about seeing real success in the fashion world. The irony was so perfect it felt scripted. "What are you wearing, Em?" my mother asked. "You should come too. Maybe it'll inspire you." "I'll be there," I said simply. "I already have my ticket." Vanessa looked surprised. "You do? How did you afford a ticket? These things are usually pretty expensive." "I got a comp ticket," I said, which was technically true. "Through some design connections." She nodded, satisfied with this explanation that fit her narrative of my small, struggling existence. "Well, good for you. It'll be educational." That night, alone in my studio, I tried on the outfit I'd designed for the reveal. A tailored jumpsuit in deep midnight blue, with strategic seaming that created structure and flow simultaneously. It was Aurora through and through, but nobody in my family had ever seen me wear my own designs. I'd always kept them separate, maintaining the fiction that I couldn't afford my own brand. My phone buzzed with a text from my operations manager, Riley. "Everything's set for tomorrow. The reveal video is perfect. Are you ready for this?" I looked at myself in the mirror, at this person I'd built in secret, and typed back, "More than ready." The Fairmont Olympic Hotel's grand ballroom was transformed into a fashion showcase that would make New York Fashion Week jealous. Crystal chandeliers cast soft light over white runway stages, while video screens displayed rotating images of Seattle's fashion scene. 500 guests mingled with champagne glasses, their conversations creating a sophisticated hum that filled the historic space. I arrived early, entering through the back entrance with my team. We'd rehearsed this moment dozens of times, but my heart was still racing as I made my way to the backstage area. Through a gap in the curtain, I could see guests arriving, including my mother and Vanessa, both dressed in their finest, looking around with wide eyes at the glamorous crowd. Vanessa was wearing the emerald dress I'd hemmed for her, and I felt a surge of satisfaction seeing my design on her, knowing she still had no idea. My mother wore a simple black dress she'd made herself, elegant in its simplicity, and I felt a pang of love for her despite everything. She'd taught me to sew, after all. She'd given me the foundation, even if she'd never understood what I'd built on it. The showcase began with presentations from 3 other Seattle designers, each talking about their brands, their inspiration, their journeys. The audience responded warmly, applauding each story, enjoying the celebration of local fashion talent. Then the lights dimmed, and the video screens lit up with the Aurora logo, that simple sunrise design that had become iconic in online fashion circles. The crowd's energy shifted immediately, a buzz of excitement rippling through the room. "Ladies and gentlemen," the host announced, "for 6 years, Aurora has been one of the most talked about brands in direct-to-consumer fashion. With over 2 million social media followers, 50 million in annual revenue, and a customer loyalty rate that exceeds 90%, Aurora has revolutionized how we think about online fashion retail." But the identity of the designer has remained a complete mystery until tonight. I watched my mother grip Vanessa's arm in excitement. Vanessa was leaning forward, champagne glass forgotten, completely absorbed in the moment. The video screen showed clips of celebrities wearing Aurora, fashion bloggers reviewing pieces, customers posting their outfits, the steady crescendo of a brand that had captured something real in the fashion world. Then my own voice came through the speakers, recorded last week in my studio. "Fashion is about transformation," my voice said as images of my designs filled the screens. "It's about showing the world who you are, even when they can't see you." For 6 years, I've designed every Aurora piece from a small studio in Seattle's SoDo district, building a brand that proved you don't need a famous name or a fashion capital to create something meaningful. You just need vision, work ethic, and the patience to wait for your moment. The lights came up on the stage, and I walked out from backstage, my midnight blue jumpsuit catching the light, my steps steady despite my hammering heart. "My name is Emma Sullivan," I said into the microphone. "And I am Aurora." The ballroom exploded in applause, but I was only watching 2 faces in the crowd. My mother's hand had flown to her mouth, her eyes wide with shock. Vanessa had gone completely pale, her champagne glass tilting dangerously in her frozen hand. I continued, my voice carrying across the ballroom. 6 years ago, I was working in my mother's tailor shop in Capitol Hill, listening to people tell me I needed a real job, that creativity didn't pay bills, that I should pursue something more practical. So I did. I built a multi-million-dollar company from my living room, using fabric scraps and a used sewing machine. I employed 47 people. I created a brand that fashion critics call innovative and customers call essential. And I did it all while hemming dresses and altering suits in that same tailor shop, because sometimes the best revenge is simply becoming everything they said you couldn't be. The applause was deafening, but I watched my mother stand up, tears streaming down her face, and I felt something crack open in my chest. Vanessa just sat there, staring at me like she was seeing a ghost, her expensive Aurora dress suddenly taking on new meaning. The presentation continued with a video tour of my studio, interviews with my team, projections showing Aurora's growth trajectory. I talked about sustainable fashion, about direct-to-consumer business models, about building a brand in the age of social media. The audience hung on every word, but my eyes kept drifting back to my family. When the presentation ended and the crowd surged forward with questions and congratulations, I made my way through the chaos to where my mother was standing. Vanessa had disappeared, probably to the bathroom to process this nuclear bomb I'd just dropped on her self-image. "Emma," my mother said, her voice breaking. "I don't understand. How did you, when did you, why didn't you tell us?" "Because you wouldn't have believed me," I said simply. "And I needed to prove it to myself first before I could prove it to you." She pulled me into a hug, and I felt 6 years of tension drain out of my shoulders. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry I made you feel like you had to hide this. I'm so proud of you, sweetheart. So incredibly proud." When Vanessa finally found me an hour later, her face was a complicated mixture of emotions I couldn't quite read. Shame, definitely. Shock, absolutely. But maybe, underneath it all, something that looked like respect. "Emma," she said quietly, pulling me aside from the crowd of well-wishers and industry contacts. "I need to apologize. I've been horrible to you. I just assumed, I didn't know." "I know," I said. "That was kind of the point." She looked down at her dress, my dress, and laughed shakily. "You hemmed this for me. You altered your own design, and you didn't say anything. You needed it for your gala," I said. "And honestly, it looked better on you after the hem. The original length wasn't quite right." She laughed again, and this time it sounded real, not that performative tinkle she usually deployed. "Is there any way I can make this up to you? Any way I can, I don't know, be a better sister?" I thought about all the years of comparisons, all the lectures about real jobs and wasted potential. I thought about the satisfaction of this moment, the sweetness of proving everyone wrong. But I also thought about the fact that she was still my sister, and that maybe, just maybe, this could be a new beginning instead of just an ending. "You can start by actually asking me about my work," I said. "Real questions, not just assumptions. And maybe stop using me as your cautionary tale at family dinners." She nodded, wiping at her eyes carefully to preserve her makeup. "Deal. And Emma, that jumpsuit is stunning. Can I buy one?" I smiled. Family discount. 6 months after the Seattle Fashion Collective reveal, I sat in my expanded studio space in SoDo, now occupying an entire floor of a renovated warehouse building. Aurora's revenue had doubled following the identity reveal, with major press coverage in Vogue, Forbes, and the New York Times. I'd been invited to speak at 3 fashion conferences, featured on 2 podcasts about successful women entrepreneurs, and offered partnership deals with major retailers that I'd carefully vetted before accepting. My mother had closed her tailor shop, not because business was bad, but because I'd hired her as Aurora's head of quality control. She'd cried when I offered her the position, telling me she'd never been so wrong about anything in her life. Now she spent her days in my studio, inspecting samples with the same meticulous attention to detail she'd always had, finally being compensated properly for skills she'd spent 40 years developing. Vanessa had surprised me by becoming Aurora's most effective unofficial marketing ambassador. She'd written a LinkedIn post about her experience that went viral, talking about entrepreneurship, family dynamics, and the danger of assuming you know someone's story. Cascade Strategic Group had actually hired Aurora for that corporate gifting program, with Vanessa managing the account. Our monthly family dinners had transformed from comparison competitions into actual conversations about business strategy, market trends, and the challenges of scaling a growing company. The financial success was gratifying, but what mattered more was the shift in how my family saw me. I was no longer the disappointing daughter who'd wasted her potential on dreams. I was Emma Sullivan, CEO of Aurora, designer of pieces that hung in closets from Seattle to New York to London, creator of a brand that had proved you could build something meaningful on your own terms. Looking back on that Sunday dinner when my mother had asked what I had besides a sewing machine and dreams, I realized she'd been right to question me, just wrong about the answer. What I had was exactly those things. A sewing machine, dreams, and the absolute determination to prove that sometimes the person everyone underestimates is actually the one who understands exactly what she's doing. As I reviewed designs for Aurora's spring collection, my phone buzzed with a text from Vanessa. Family dinner Sunday? Mom wants to show us her quality control system improvements. She's very excited about efficiency metrics. I smiled and typed back, wouldn't miss it. Because that was the real victory, not just the money or the recognition or the satisfaction of proving everyone wrong. It was sitting at Sunday dinner and finally being seen, really seen, for who I'd been all along. The sweetest revenge isn't destruction. It's transformation. It's building something so undeniable that the people who dismissed you have no choice but to acknowledge what they missed. It's watching them realize that the person they underestimated was actually the person who understood success better than anyone. And sometimes, if you're lucky, it's watching them grow enough to celebrate your victory instead of resenting it, learning that real family isn't about being right. It's about being willing to admit when you were wrong.